The next measure is Proposition 15, and Brian Euler will be presenting that one.
Okay, Proposition 15 would make two major changes to the taxation of business properties in California. The first and the biggest change would be made by Prop 15 is to modify the way that counties determine the taxable value of commercial properties. The end result of this change would be that most owners of commercial properties worth more than $3 million would pay higher property taxes. This change would be put in place over time, starting in 2022, but probably would not be fully in place until around 2025. The second change that we made by Prop 15 is to reduce the amount of property taxes business pay for their non-real estate property, such as equipment, machinery, and furniture. Specifically, each business's property tax bill for their business equipment would be reduced by around $5,500 per year. And if a business's current tax bill on their equipment is less than that amount, its bill would be eliminated entirely. Neither of these changes would affect the amount of property taxes paid on residential properties. While Prop 15 does increase taxes on some business properties and reduces it on others, overall it will result in increased property tax payments by owners of business properties. Our office estimates that Prop 15, once it has been fully implemented in around 2025, will result in between $6.5 billion to $11.5 billion per year in new property taxes that would go to local governments and schools. About 60% would go to cities, counties, and special districts across the state, while the remaining 40% would go to schools and community colleges.
Okay, so this measure is essentially, if you probably everyone knows Prop 13, even if you weren't around in 1978 when it passed. It's the property tax initiative that's had a huge impact on the state since then. So this is called the split roll, which is splitting off the property taxes from individual homes and the business property taxes. And so allowing the business property taxes to shift with the market, but keeping the Prop 13 protections for homes. So who put it on the ballot is something people often ask. It's the League of Women Voters head at the time, and then people who head up other sort of community engagement and activist organizations. It's something that's been talked about for many years and as a way of changing some of the effects of Prop 13. So we have the Democratic Party and the Green Party and the Peace and Freedom Party in support. The Republican Party and Libertarian Party are against. And then we have a whole group of organizations in support, including the Sierra Club, the League of Women Voters, the ACLU, the Nurses Association again. Dolores Huerta as an individual is in favor of it, teachers, nurses, etc. And then in opposition, we have business organizations, of course, and taxpayers organizations. An interesting thing about the NAACP thing that you'll see come up a lot, sometimes in a place that you wouldn't expect to see the NAACP. The head of that organization, the statewide organization, is Alice Huffman. And she, in addition to being the head of the statewide NAACP, has a consulting firm. And many of these ballot measure committees have paid money to her consulting firm. So take that as you may. On the endorsements for the media, we have the San Francisco Chronicle, LA Times, and La Opinion on support. And then opposition, we have a number of other newspapers across the state, Northern and Southern California, including the Mercury News. And then the funding here, we have on the yes side, Chan Zuckerberg, that's the Zuckerberg you think it is, Teachers Association, unions especially, and then we have business organizations on the no side, unsurprisingly, because they would pay additional taxes. And this one's neck and neck. You've actually got really close funding, and that's pretty unusual. That means you'll end up seeing ads for both sides on this one, which isn't the case with some of these. Okay, some questions. Is farmland considered commercial industrial property under this initiative?
No.
Wow, that was succinct. Thank you. Um, who's overseeing the funding allocation?
Counties are constitutionally charged with allocating property tax revenues, and that they would also be in charge of allocating these dollars as well.
Could this potentially increase rents and expenses for small businesses?
I think the measure could have a variety of effects on costs for small businesses. I think some small businesses could see some increased costs from taxes or rent. Some, it could be neutral. Some could achieve either tax or other savings under the measure. I think it's not possible to make kind of a generalized statement.
There is a provision in there where smaller businesses can deduct some of their other costs, right? Some of their business furniture and so forth, or their equipment.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the measure reduces essentially the taxable value of business equipment and machinery and furniture, basically all of the property owned by businesses that isn't land and buildings. This exception, this change would result in a reduction of their tax bill for those kinds of items by up to $5,500 a year per business.
And how is the $3 million value determined?
I'm not sure I know what that question means, but I think
yeah. So is it all of the property that they own, or other things that add up to that $3 million?
yeah. So the $3 million threshold is applied to the property owner. If I owned $2 million, if I owned 3 properties that total $2 million, none of them would be included in this. If I own 3 properties that totaled $4 million, even if none of them were individually worth $3 million or more, they would be subject to the changes under this measure.
Okay, so if an individual owned $3 million or less than $3 million in business property, they would still be under the current Prop 13 limits.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. And then we have some questions about if it would lead to changing the other half of Prop 13. Not necessarily. People always make slippery slope arguments, but it would be a separate measure entirely to do that. And it's very popular. If you look at public opinion polls over the years, Prop 13 is incredibly popular for homeowners, obviously, or potential future homeowners too. Okay, thank you, Brian. We're going to move on to the next measure.